So nobody has the confidence that they can buy a house in Singapore? What? Alright, let's just settle this. In today's video, we're going to talk about housing affordability. I'm going to share with you some tips on how you can definitely afford a flat in Singapore. Let's get started. Hey bros, my name is Gerald and I'm an ex-national badminton player turned YouTuber turned real estate agent in Singapore. So I'm all about building investment knowledge so that we can all become rich and stay rich forever. As we know, housing in Singapore is getting more and more expensive. That means that the younger generation have to start planning even younger. And we need to be even more careful with our money if we want to be able to afford a HDB flat. But I want to assure you that it can definitely be done. And we'll talk about how you can do it in this video. But more importantly, we're going to enjoy some of the fun, juicy stuff, look at some of the questions people have and, understand where it's coming from and analyze them in more details. Of course, buying a house is not an overnight thing. It's a very big investment in Singapore. It takes years to build up the capital, and more importantly, you need to build up that knowledge so that you know how to manage your finances when it comes to having a home, because it's a big commitment and you don't want to screw it up because you can lose a lot of money. So for myself, I actually started working since I was 16 years old. It took me almost 10 years to build up the knowledge, build up the capital to be able to buy my first flat. But of course, when you see a very controversial video like this, it's not the post, it is the comments that we should look out for. So let's dive right into the comments before we talk about the tips. So someone new says that I agree that public housing should be kept affordable for the masses and not some asset meant to enhance wealth. Leave the private property, stocks, options, futures and cryptos to those who wish to speculate. I think somewhat agree with Simon because public housing is meant for the public, right? And condos now are getting really expensive, which is also another problem because if, let's say, we completely remove the ability to profit off of HDBs. Number one, HDB dwellers have no chance of leveraging HDBs to be able to, move up the social class and afford condos and landed properties. Number two, why even buy if it doesn't profit? Might as well just rent, right? The whole point of having ownership is that there's some form of financial incentive. Otherwise, why buy, right? So, while I agree, I also have my doubts. It's not an easy decision to make because think of our parents as well as people before us who have earned hundreds of thousands from their HDB and then use that money to buy condos and prop up the condo prices. If we are completely devoid of that opportunity, it's unfair. Why should it be this unfair, right? And then not to mention, if you remove the ability to profit from HDB, imagine what will happen to the HDB price. Everyone is going to lose tons and tons of money. Basically, you're eradicating Singapore's wealth by I don't know how many percent. Yeah, so that's something to think about. So this comment is good. Okay, so this is by Kim Tam. He said, first, consider buying a freehold landed. If you can't, then buy a leasehold landed. If you still can't, buy a freehold condo. If you still cannot, buy a leasehold condo. If you still can't, buy a resale HDB. If not, smaller HDB. If not, BTO. If not, rent a condo landed. If not, HDB. If not, consider renting a room in condo. Then, if not, consider renting a room in condo with full facility usage. Yes, finally, now can. So I think this was quite funny. But you forgot, you can actually live in JB and then take the train over in Singapore. Recently Kelvin made a video, 5 minutes only, which is not quite true. Yeah, because one of my staff lived in JB and worked in Singapore. I employed him, but it was so difficult. Every day is like 3-hour journey. It's brutal. Okay, so now the next comment. Paniko Kos, I don't know what's his real name. Housing availability isn't a joke anymore. It's the whole circus. Okay, so now the question is, if HDB is the circus, who is the clown? You or me for buying a HDB? I mean, nowadays BTOs are getting really hard to book. But with the latest penalties, if you get a slot but you don't book, there's a penalty, right? It's gotten a little bit better. But then again, I think if you still get a terrible unit, then how? Don't think you get a penalty. You have to live with a property that you don't like, with the bad features that you don't like for 5 years. Painful. And for the next comment is that if can only sell back to HDB, shouldn't it be called a rental home? It's called rental home when people are making hundreds of thousands of dollars when they sell. Then why leasee and not owner? I'll answer you when you answer my question. And this is getting saucy. So if this happens, they're always at the mercy of the government. It is according to HDB. The contract says that you are not an owner. Oh, this is like digging very deep into the rabbit hole. And this goes very deep, isn't it? So what is going on? Okay, on a more serious note, it is true, HDB 99-year leases are different compared to private property 99-year leasehold. In fact, when you buy a property, you're issued a title. Title is kind of like a sense paper to show that you have ownership of the property. HDB owners are issued a different title called Subsidiary Certificate of Title, whereas if you get a regular, leasehold off of a private property, it's SSCT, which is Subsidiary Strata Certificate of Title. And the difference there is that you don't own a fractional share of the land, which is what this person is arguing. And this becomes even more obvious in the legal document because it really does state that you are a leasee and HDB as the leaseor, right? This is in contrast to the typical transfer, which is buyer and seller. And the implications here are huge. This means that anything you want to do, right, you need to seek permission of the owner. For example, when you want to rent out your room, if it's a private property, you just rent it out. But in Singapore's case, do you notice that if you want to rent out a HDB, you actually need to seek permission from HDB? Have you ever wondered why? That's because you're not the owner. But here's where it becomes different, because in terms of finances, you can make money out of your flat's appreciation, profit from rent if HDB approves of you renting, which is technically subletting, and of course, you also pay property taxes like an actual owner. So I think this puts a lot of people at an uneasy position, and people feel like, hey, I'm privy to HDB. HDB can confiscate my property, like kick me out, as a landlord. We're at the mercy of HDB, all sorts of controversial theory. But the fact remains that HDB has helped millions of Singaporeans accumulate wealth. If they know how to bargain, find freebies, it is technically considered an asset, right? And unless there's a huge political change, we don't expect things to drastically change overnight, because HDB always bears in mind they don't want Singaporeans to lose a massive amount of their wealth overnight, right? That's otherwise who will vote for them. Food for thought. So now we understand a little bit about the gossip, the backdrop, what can be done about the HDB flat. Let's work out the math to buy a BTO in Singapore, because I think BTOs are one of the easiest ways to get started owning your first property, and more importantly, it gets you at a very good start. The reason being is that BTOs are built at a discount off of prices of buildings around the place, meaning the moment you get your keys, right, you lock in a massive profit already. So based on the ballpark figure, is from 20 to 30% discount off of regular properties nearby. And if the flat is like 500k, immediately the moment you step in your home, you are up, what, $150,000? That's a lot of money. But then of course the question becomes, how do you even afford this home in Singapore, this subsidized home, that is so expensive? So let's work out the math. We're going to use the most recent example, the October 2023 BTO prices. Of course, these numbers are not exact, it's just a ballpark figure. Be sure to check the relative prices to know how much discount you're actually getting vis-a-vis buying a resale property nearby. So in the recent BTO, the 3-room flats are priced between $216,000 to as much as $368,000. So I'm going to show you the math. So in this case study, I'm going to do a very simple calculation to show you can buy this BTO flat for literally $0 down payment. Almost, it's not free. There are some fees involved. Let's assume you just want to buy the cheapest possible flat in this October 2023 BTO. You don't care, you just want a roof over your head, right? But you don't have a lot of income. In this case, we're going to use this profile where you are married, but you only have single income. Or if you have dual income, it adds up to only $3,000 a month. So if you have this income, actually you only need about $3,500 to be able to afford to buy your own place. So in terms of down payment, it's 20%, which makes up of $43,000. But because of the enhanced housing grant that the government gives, because you earn only $3,000, you would get $60,000 in grant out of the maximum $80,000. And because down payment is $43,000, down payment is $0. So the down payment is $0. Is your flat actually free? No, there are some fees that you need to pay. I'm going to list them over here so that you can calculate. So for the case study that we use, it's about $3,500. That's why you always will need some cash to be able to afford your property. So now that you know you can buy a home in Singapore for $0 down payment, I'm sure that's deserving of a subscribe. And with a $3,000 income, if you go to HDB's website, you try to input how much loan can you get the full loan, which is $172,000. Bear in mind, this is to buy the cheapest tengah flat, which is around $216,000. Maximum loan you can get is $172,000, which you can get if you have a 3K salary. But of course, as a good rule of thumb, I read from the book that you need at least 30% of the property as cash or savings saved up before you buy, because it's very risky in bad times. Interestingly, that figure adds up to slightly over $60,000, which we already got from the grant. So this means that we want to build up a cash buffer of around at least $10,000 in cash saving. And assuming you save $300 every month, that would take you 3 years in order for you to save up $10,000 in cash savings for the buffer. So the monthly installment for this flat will cost around $740, but with a $3,000 income, you get $1,100 in CPF every single month, which you can use to pay, meaning to say that every single month, your payment for the house is $0 cash. And of course, because this is a 3-room HDB flat, this means you have 2 bedrooms. You can further house hack by staying in the master bedroom and renting out the common room. Let's say you rent out for a nice $700 a month. This means you can get a roof over your head for practically free of charge. You just need to pay for the utility bills, which can go from $100 to about $300 every single month. Then now the question is, wait, I don't get stuck with a small flat, right? Everybody wants to achieve a larger flat. Remember, BTO, once you get your key, is likely to have appreciation because HDB already publicly said that BTOs are discounted flats compared to current resale flat, meaning they take the price of new nearby flats, they discount it, we don't know what's the amount, and then they offer you that subsidized flat. So this means that once you get your keys, you have that pot of gold, maybe 50,000, maybe 100,000. That money can now be used as a down payment for your second home. Let's say you want to upgrade to a 4-room flat or 5-room HDB flat, right? You now have that cash to be able to afford a larger flat. So right now, I think a lot of us or the youngsters are very fearful that, hey, there's $1 million flats. How are we going to afford the down payment? 20%. Oh my God. But actually, it is much simpler to start small, accumulate that first pot of gold, and use it to roll over and buy a larger home. Of course, it sounds scary to think that, oh, there are risks involved. Yes, I need to move twice, which is inconvenient. But a lot of times, if you want to buy the place that you absolutely love, for example, a lot of my friends stay in the central area, Toa Payoh area, and the first home they want is a 4-room flat in Toa Payoh, which costs like, I don't know, $700,000-$800,000. That can be very scary and expensive. And if you stretch yourself too thin, it becomes financially stressful. So that's why by starting small and then slowly upgrading future, having that long-term plan, it helps alleviate a lot of the financial stress. You'll be in a much better position. You can accumulate wealth, and that should be able to appease your mind thinking, hey, it's just like serving NS times 2, right? It's 5 years MOP, staying in a place that's not so ideal but makes money, and then in your second home, you can probably strive towards your dream home in Singapore. So of course, all this is on the back that you definitely get employed throughout. So you're not like, chilling out and not working. Because if you do not work for a certain amount of time, not having an income would affect your ability to get loans. And again, in this context, loans is one of the most important equations of being able to afford a big property. So of course, one of the most important tip I have for you is that if you want to buy a house, you definitely need to start working and you need to start saving earlier. This builds experience and also this builds discipline to be able to keep a job, because you do need it for your housing payments. You do need it to be able to afford a home, and that's part of adulting in Singapore. And the second tip is to have a good credit score, because if you don't have a good credit score, you won't be able to qualify for a loan. And the last thing you want is that you have the cash ready. You work for 12 years to slog hard, got a good job at a high pay so that you can afford the loan, but you don't have the credit score to be able to qualify for a loan. Oh no, then you have to spend 1 whole year trying to build up your credit score, and that can be really painful. So I think the easiest way to get started to build a credit score is number 1, getting a student credit card and paying it on time. Number 2, just apply for a credit card once you get a job. And if you want to find out which are some of the best cashback credit card, you can check out the video I made over here, or check out what YouTube recommends you over here. And as always, invest safely, and if you have any questions, feel free to join my community chat, and I'll see you next time. Take care and stay safe, everyone.